Thank you, Tish, and thank all of y'all for being here. And you know, I just show up where Tish tells me to. If it's breakfast, it's breakfast. If it's lunch, it's lunch. It's all good. And this is nice because this is a small room, and we can just talk to you. It's really nice. No microphones, no other stuff. And we are being recorded for those out there who may want to watch this later or watching it now. So anyway, today we do have Blaine. And look, one of the biggest entities we have in our county is the Hancock County Port and Harbor Authority. And you know, my first memory of that place is my brother Tommy took me hunting out there one time. And I didn't have a driver's license, so I had to be about 12 or 13 years old, I don't know. And quite frankly, I was about as interested in hunting then as I am now. I don't care. So, and all I remember, but there was one building, and there were these huge train wheels on this track, and you could just push them, and they would just roll forever. And I thought, wow, those are balanced. That's my memory of that place. Now, it's a small town. It's got a fire department. It's got a fire chief. It's got all kinds of stuff. And it's part of a very complicated organization which you run. So can you just, for those of us who don't know, explain to us what it all entails and how it all operates together briefly?
Absolutely. Yep. Thank you, Ted, for having me today and being able to hopefully inform each one of you that are here. Hancock Port and Harbor, as we grow, the county grows, and Hancock County, you know, is continuing to grow, and that's not just because of one person or one organization and entity, but it's because of a series of events and milestones and things that have been in place over a period of time. So we are complex. We certainly are unique. Hancock Port and Harbor is the only entity in the state of Mississippi that specifically manages the Port Bentonville Railroad, Stennis International Airport, and Port Bentonville Industrial Park. And so we touch all three modes of transportation, and those are all very complex and unique assets to manage, and more importantly, on how we're strategically trying to grow that. So we have about 30 employees. Our annual budget typically over the last few years has ranged, depending on federal or state grants that we may have, has ranged anywhere from $40 to $50 million to capture a lot of that capital investment and grants that are currently in process. But most of that is driven by Port Bentonville Industrial Park, accounts for about $11 million a year in revenue. And then we have Stennis International, that is, as you're here today, any questions, feel free to ask. But as we continue to grow with new buildings, facilities, hangars, and opportunities there with different agreements, we're looking at about $3.5 million a year in revenue continuing to grow here at Stennis International. So our organization sees about $14.5 million a year. We obviously strategically try to invest that, and we're netting about $6 million. And a lot of the challenges that our cities and our residents are facing, we're facing as well. Insurance, right, has been a significant challenge that's impacting a lot of our housing markets and a lot of residents, a lot of commercial businesses, and it's impacting our industrial tenants as well. And so, you know, our expenses continue to kind of look a little volatile, and hopefully that'll stabilize with different efforts and policies. But nevertheless, we're taking that net profit that we're seeing, and we're trying to leverage that strategically for things that may range from new site development or infrastructure. So specifically here at the airport, we've been able to successfully leverage things like multimodal funds from MDOT. We've been able to leverage funds such as Restore and GCRF, which you know are very unique and specific to the Mississippi Gulf Coast. And then more importantly, at Port Bentonville, we're working closely with the Board of Supervisors on trying to leverage and build out capacity for ARPA funds. We've successfully recently worked with our USDOT and our federal delegation on things like CRISI, we're successfully applying for, and hopefully we'll successfully receive future funds to try to grow the railroad there and opportunities for industrial capacity with new industry. But more importantly, we've also currently have an active project with the Maritime Administration through USDOT for a $6 million railroad storage yard. So it's a complex organization daily, and more importantly, how we strategically utilize that. There's a lot of things we have to do, obviously, on the front end to try to help us grow new capital investment and new industry opportunities here in Hancock County. And despite all those things that we talk about, right, we also have a role that we play working with our cities, working with our county, whether that's commercial and retail recruitment. We feel like we just had a new agreement with Mississippi Power that was put in place, and we're trying to, over the next 3 years, recruit new commercial brands to our commercial inventory space on Highway 90 and Diamond Head as well on I-10 corridor. And then we're also doing things in workforce. We're working closely on a tuition assistance program that Port and Harbor started funding 2 years ago. We're in year 3. And so we're putting funds to try to ensure that every graduating senior has an opportunity to go get a 2-year vocational degree or higher education, which is only going to help our existing industry and new industry moving forward to ensure we have a skilled workforce. So we're doing those things as well on top of the day-to-day operations and capital management and working with our existing industry as well. So, okay. And that's not even mentioning what we do at Stennis Space Center and working with those industries.
So I was talking about how complex it is. So obviously there's the port, there's the airport. Y'all have about 3,700 acres over there. You have about 3,000 acres here. You have the railroad, which is an incredible operation. And then you also have businesses at Stennis, right? So how many employees do y'all say y'all are responsible for or bringing in? Not talking about the 30 that y'all have directly.
Yeah, so indirectly, we feel like our efforts, our services support roughly about 800 jobs at Port Bienville. And then I would say here at the airport, we're seeing that probably around 300, obviously with tenants and other indirect employees there that come out and frequently visit Stennis Space Center or Stennis International Airport. We've been able to recently geofence a lot of the cell phone data to kind of look at visitation here. It's really interesting. I think most people think of this airport as just being Hancock County's airport. 70% of the visitors on a weekly basis are coming from Harrison County, Jackson County, New Orleans area. And so it's much more than just a Hancock County airport. It's really a regional airport and a regional driver. And then when you combine with a lot of the different MDA incentives, workforce initiatives, we work very closely with a lot of the industries at Stennis Space Center as well, which, during COVID, as remote work and other things have changed, but looking at some of the industry trends in Navy, you probably have roughly about 4,500 employees out there at this time.
Okay. So the number I saw in y'all's 2021 report, which is the last one I could find, was 6,343. So and y'all are returning about $8,800,000 a year to the county in tax revenue.
We're not returning it. We are capturing it. You're talking about in terms of ad valorem or
yes,
assessed
yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I understand.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, more to Hancock County, we're an industrial county. That's who we are. If you look at the commuter patterns, if you look at our house count, obviously our population is much smaller than most, but geographically and looking at industry trends, St. Tammany, Pearl River County, Stone County, Harrison County, most of those people drive into Hancock County to work. That's not counting in our tourism market, right, and what we have for secondary home markets. But so yes, the industrial base here really helps our school districts. More importantly, helps county, and so accounts for a large footprint of the ad valorem revenue that comes into Hancock County.
And Tina, remember we were kids? They drag raced out here. There was nothing going on. Now they have all these people visiting.
A little trailer when the airport first started. It was a little bitty, like a construction trailer out there.
It's come a long way.
It is.
It's come. So talking about economic development, obviously that's one of y'all's functions, and you got pretty good revenue in that, and to be able to do that. So I read a report somewhere in that 2021 report that y'all had 93 companies that y'all had prospected or tried to bring in, and you brought 9 in. That's not a bad. Is that a bad batting average? 10%? That seems pretty good.
It's not a bad batting average, and that changes, right? And so, looking at our existing customer database and what we're looking at, just year to date, we're probably at about 25 to 30 prospects.
This year?
Yes, in terms of prospecting. Now, I would say that is, while obviously operations, capital investments are the root of it consumes most of our employees' time. I think the external expectation for us, our commissioner's expectation, our partner agency expectations, people want us to focus on business development and economic development. I mean, so obviously that is how we are judged, whether fair or unfair. At the end of the day, I think that's what we are strategically trying to spend most of our time, and how we're strategically investing our money, whether that's in utility improvements, due diligence on sites. We just left a meeting this morning at DMR talking about a mitigation effort utilizing Go Mesa funds. So you mentioned 6,000 plus acres. That land is not doing this county any good unless we're strategically trying to go through each step on how do we develop that. And so there's a lot of things, obviously, that precede the ability to say we captured a win for this county. And so a lot of that is in the processes of expanding capacity on railroad, expanding capacity for warehouse, expanding water utilities or sewer utilities, clearing and looking at a timber harvesting plan. Those are all the things that we are looking at over a 24 or 36-month plan. And we're actually going to present a strategic action plan to our commission on June 26th. Hopefully that'll be adopted in July. And so that's going to be a driving force for what all our efforts will be publicly available and what we're trying to do. And so I would say that there's nothing that we're doing day to day that's not making sure that priority for us is trying to get new industry to Hancock County.
All right, and so so you have these wins. Let's talk about wins and losses. So when somebody comes to Hancock County and they're competing against everybody else and they choose to develop in one of our sites, why do they come here? What are our strengths?
It may vary depending on the industry, right? So, I mean, make no mistake, the fact that Hancock County, let's say Port Bienville, the fact that we have $20 million has been put in place over the last 3 years. We have new dock facilities, but we have obviously water access through the Intracoastal Waterway. So if a end user or a new industry may say, I've got to get my raw materials from Port of New Orleans, the fact that we're close proximity to the Port of New Orleans and the fact that we have Class 1 railroad access and we operate a short line rail, those could all be driving factors of why they need to locate here, because they need rail service, they need barge activity, and they need to be close proximity to Port of New Orleans or Port of Mobile or Port of Gulfport, whatever those reasons may be. Then when you start looking into, I would say Stennis International or Stennis Space Center, obviously depending on if it's DOD or defense industry, or depending on if it's an emerging technology on unmanned systems, they may need to locate close to the Navy. So we're trying to ensure that the industries that we're targeting really obviously fit. But one of the biggest challenges for us that we continue to hear on a recurring theme is housing, which is a complex challenge, right? Because 1/3 of our county's in a buffer zone, and obviously, we're limited in what areas can grow with housing. So some of that is in a floodplain. So if we're not working on floodplain or other codes and other things there, then we're going to always struggle to continue to grow the housing market, which also helps us be able to show to industries that want to come in that their workforce is going to be able to locate and live within a 20-minute drive time. I think largely because of our buffer zone, that's why you've seen Pearl River County and their housing market continue to boom, because that is where Stennis, Port Bienville, a lot of people are living. So workforce and housing continue to be a lot of challenges that we hear from new industry opportunities, because I think the logistics, the transportation infrastructure is there. We have strategically been working on and will continue to work on the utility improvements and site improvements that are necessary, the due diligence, the mitigation, the rail, the hangar development. We can do all those things extremely well. And I think we have strategically programmed different funds and leveraged local cash match and different federal or state grant programs. So I think Port and Harbor is doing that with the support of our legislators, support of our key partners, with whether that's Mississippi Power or our House and Senate members, and our federal delegation. So we can do all those things, but if we don't start to work on a long-term solution on housing, floodplain, and workforce. I will tell you a number that I'm not making up. We've been in conversations with companies out at Stennis, and they say hiring propulsion engineers is always a challenge in Mississippi and the Gulf Coast. So, if aerospace and aviation is an area where we're going to continue to try to attract and grow because we have unique assets for this country and for this region, then we've got to figure out how do we align four-year institutions for Mississippi to get curriculum that's placing them directly, I think, in these types of modern or new propulsion type jobs. So workforce is a challenge. Doesn't matter if it's a skilled vocational or a four-year degree, but we've got to figure out a path on that. And what we've started to try to do is work with our key partners such as Pearl River Community College. That's why we started the CTAP program and that fund to try to get, over time, if it's measured correctly, managed correctly, hopefully a better populated workforce that lives and resides in this region in Hancock County that's helping us attract new industry and retain the ones we have.
So those state boys don't have a good engineering program? I thought that's what they're talking.
They do, but they do. They do have a great mechanical, civil, and other engineering programs. But I think 3D printing is changing some of the curriculum requirements on propulsion, right, and different things there. So I think when you look at key drivers for new industry recruitment, we can do everything well to help us be able to present and prepare to attract someone. But I think if we can't start working on the housing and workforce challenges, then it may all be for nothing.
Okay, all right, fair enough. And it's interesting reading your balance sheet. You had a number that was incredible to me. And by the way, looking at some of the things you hope to do, it's like $42 million worth of projects out at the port. It's like $74 million out here. I mean, at least those were the numbers at the time. But y'all have a number on your balance sheet. It's called equity.
Yeah, right.
But it's a fund balance, or it was.
It was.
$87,539,000.
Yeah.
Is that still there?
Yeah, no, that has been strategically leveraged, and our assets, as we're completing these projects, the equity in these assets continue to grow, which I think is, again, a number off the top of my head is over $100 million. But in terms of cash available balance, we have strategically tried to ensure, especially, and that number has changed because we are trying to leverage for the first time a lot of these federal grant programs that, due to the infrastructure bill and infrastructure law, we're trying to put that in play there. And then we're also looking at other state grants and different things that we've tried to invest. And again, that money we make doesn't do this county any good if we're not strategically investing it to try to help grow.
I was surprised there was that much money sitting.
Correct, but I want to not, I think at
I'm
times.
not bad-mouthing.
No.
I was just surprised by the number.
I'm reluctant to say what our cash balance is for the record, but it is continuing to decrease. We do project it to decrease, but as we're strategically investing, our net revenue should grow, right? If we do it correctly. And so I think that's where we are to date. And some of those priorities have shifted as projects and other things have moved on. And some of those things from the 2021 report were not funded fully, or we pivoted to a different effort that may. COVID changed some of those requirements. COVID changed some of those demands. And so we're, again, some of those priorities have shifted over the last few years.
Well, in fairness, in the development y'all did in that year, the year before, you took $7 million out of there. So you were spending it down at that time, too.
Absolutely.
All right. So master plan, next 10 years, right? This came out in 2019. And you and I were talking on the phone before we did this, and you said there had to be some adjustments to that. So what is the master plan for all this thing? I mean, it has to fit together.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think the things that I've mentioned that play into some of the master plan, if you look ahead at the next 5 to 10 years, I think Stennis International Airport continues to grow, and some of the unmanned systems, DoD, FMS world, and hopefully what we see is a continued growth for grant leverage, working with our legislatures to be able to build some facilities to accommodate the tech park and see that phase development continue to occur. We're hoping to get to a point of using our Restore and GCRF monies, hopefully announce phase 1 of that and go to bid this summer. And then looking at how we can try to leverage a public-private partnerships to look in and come in and strategically invest in spec buildings to support some of the industry demand we're seeing. This is something we know we cannot do that alone. Port and Harbor doesn't have the ability, I think, to go in and build $10 million or $20 million hangar facilities to support some of the growth opportunities we're seeing. So we're trying to leverage local cash and grant dollars to incentivize these public-private partnerships. But if I look ahead at the next 5 years, I think every site on here, Fred and Al Key, has a hangar on it. I think Tech Park is well underway. One of the things we'd love to see would be Stennis and Airport Drive. If you look at our workforce, you look at the college investments, I think we need to 4-lane this road and start working with MDOT on how we can get that as a key corridor. And so, working on that in the upcoming session, I think is something we look to do. But I think you'll see a vibrant corridor that is a center of excellence for aviation, defense, workforce, higher education, and seeing what that'll continue to grow. So again, I think that's here. That's not counting what efforts I think Port Bienville, our number one effort is trying to get another new manufacturer or chemical industry out of Port Bienville. And we're doing that by leveraging a lot of these assets that you mentioned and working with different entities on, we should be announcing soon, expanding water capacity, adding a new well and tank for the first time in 20 years. We're looking at road improvements there. We're looking at specifically a new warehouse that should start construction by the end of this year. We're looking at growing rail capacity from 450 rail cars up to about 800 or 850 over the next 3 years, utilizing a lot of these federal grants and programs and local cash infusion. It's also been working with Governor Reeves on restore funds and the legislature to be able to go to those efforts. So, I think we'll be able to show how Hancock County truly is a multimodal hub for commodities, workforce, aviation, manufacturing, advanced manufacturing. So those are all the things that we're working on, and I think that I do not believe it's unrealistic because many of the things we're working on are already funded or in place.
And throughout this report, the master plan, the word restore is there. What are they talking about? I mean, obviously there's a restoration funds, but what are they restoring? Land?
Well, trying to restore our economy, right, to what it was or what it was supposed to be pre some of the BP oil spills. So, I mean, I think a lot of the restore funds, the restore funds that are probably mentioned, specifically mentioned in a lot of these master plans and capital improvement plans are very specific to what the coastal counties have as a opportunity to leverage a lot of these restore grants through Treasury and DEQ.
Okay.
So that's what a lot of that is referencing in that. So. And we've been able to be successful working with various partners on leveraging those projects for infrastructure, rehabilitation, and docks and other improvements, rail, to, I think, help us grow not just the operation side, but new industry opportunity as well.
Okay, well, very good. Well, look, let's open it up to y'all. What questions y'all have for Blaine?
Any questions from the audience?
Dominic had a lot of questions, y'all. I'm just saying.
Set the bar high. Yep.
Well, I'll start out with one. Blaine, we had a presentation the other day on Friday from a company called High Store. And could you just talk about that? They are located at Port Bienville.
Yes.
And they were actually making a presentation to Amtrak about hydrogen-fueled trains versus diesel.
Yep. So I would highly recommend that if time allows in the coming months to do a power hour session with their CEO and have her down to talk about it, because I don't want to do their proposed concept an injustice by overselling or underselling it. But Port and Harbor has been working with High Store Energy for the better part of the last year, and what they are looking to do essentially is the Department of Energy program has a $10 billion pot of money that is going to select by the end of this year probably 4 to 8 different regions for different opportunities in different regions in this country for trying to grow production, export, and storage for hydrogen, alternative energy and fuels, which specifically we are continuing to hear how converting that by 2030 for natural gas on industrialization. And so a lot of our companies in Port Bienville, specifically in their process, they use and consume a lot of natural gas for boilers and other chemical production. And Leslie's an engineer, so I don't want to misspeak. And so, but all that being said, High Store's goal is they have an abundance of land under their control and ownership. They have salt domes, which have traditionally been used for deep well injection for fuel or oil, natural gas, and so which that whole technology is nothing new. It's just using geology to deep well inject and store hydrogen as well. So what their concept is to take Mississippi, our natural geology that you cannot replicate anywhere else in the world, utilize those resources and natural resources in the salt domes, and basically show that Mississippi and this region has the ability to serve as a national solution and supplier to be able to take their technology and store here, produce here, and then use Port Bienville to potentially as a production for export by barge and rail to serve the region, and more importantly, serve a lot of your industrial consumers within the region, such as Baton Rouge or Mobile. And so our role, we believe, is if they're funded, whether they're funded or not, we believe we can work with them to utilize Port Bienville in that capacity to support the production and export capabilities for the region. And so I do think that they filed in March to the Department of Energy. They're moving through that process, and I believe their concept is very unique Not sure who else has applied for that. I think there's roughly about 20 applicants that are pursuing those funds, but I think High Store Energy has the ability and has the concept that could be very transformational for not just Mississippi, but the Mississippi Gulf, or the whole Gulf Coast region.
And at our meeting, the CEO, Laura Luce, said that she would be establishing her corporate headquarters here in Bay St. Louis, which was a great announcement to hear. Any other questions from the audience? I have another question. Because I was going in and out, I don't know if this was answered, but did you provide the update on the Airspace Academy?
So the hangar is just reached substantial completion. They're looking to, I believe, start in the fall with some classes here at their hangar that I believe is roughly 20,000 square feet. And then the main college campus and aviation academy is under construction. They had a notice to proceed, I believe, for January 4th, and they're looking at completion for the academy and main campus for PRCC here in Hancock County, I believe, to be complete by next summer. I think it was an 18-month construction timeline on that roughly $10 million project. So we're excited to obviously see that come complete. Many of the new industry opportunities, as well as our existing tenants, I think are excited to see that pipeline start to come into play here. And so I think enrollment will continue to increase, and so we're excited to continue to that partnership. So,
any other questions?
All right, so I'm going to let you close it. Anything you want to add that you didn't get in there? Because you got a lot in there.
Yeah, I think we covered a lot. So,
You gave us a 5-year plan, which would make you 41. I still have injuries older than that. So, there's a lot of things you can do if you really want to. So what is the big vision of this thing?
Oh, man, that's a loaded question. I don't think we have enough time to capture it. No, but yeah, no, I certainly think to the points that we've mentioned, the points we've covered, I think our goal, my goal is, I think Port and Harbor is a unique brand. I think we're very fortunate to have it. I think, it's a unique asset to Mississippi. I think many of our legislatures and other officials recognize that. And I think we do a good job. So I think it's to continue on the momentum across the multiple administrations that have been here and start to really execute plans, because we have a one-time opportunity with all these different coastal funds. And so if we do our job wisely and work well together in executing those plans, I personally think that we will see, for the first time in a decade or two, a lot of new industry opportunities that I think will carry this county hopefully for the next 50 years. Right? And so that was a broad answer because it's a complicated question.
It's a complicated question. Well, thank you for your time. We appreciate it. We'll be watching.
Thank you, Ted. Appreciate it.
Take us to new heights on board.